Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. This has been very helpful. Because members have been putting down their views about the JCPOA, I'm going to do the same thing. I was one of the largest proponents of the JCPOA on this committee, and I continue to be, and I believe it was disastrous for the Trump administration to back out of it. The first sentence of the first paragraph, as I recall, said that Iran reaffirms that it will never seek to purchase, acquire, or develop a nuclear weapon.
That is correct.
An enforceable agreement.
That is correct.
Signed before the entire global community, not only with allies of the United States, with adversaries, the United States, Russia, and China. Permanent, enforceable, would give the U.S. grounds for, I think, defendable military action should Iran have violated it.
That's correct.
The agreement contained many other provisions with respect to limitations on Iran's nuclear program. Now, many of those provisions were temporary. Some expired in 5 years, some expired in 10, some expired in 15, some expired in 25. But there was one other permanent part of the agreement. At year 8 in the agreement, the Iranian legislature was required to permanently embrace the additional protocol inspection requirements of the IAEA, which at the time and today was state of the art in terms of inspection. So a permanent agreement never to purchase, acquire, develop nuclear weapons, and a permanent inspection regime that would enable us to determine if they were violating their agreement. And what did we give up to get that? What did we give up? The ranking member said, we gave them a lot of money. We gave them their money. Great work by Chairman Menendez and others in putting a sanctions regime in place had led us to be able to freeze money that was not our money, wasn't American taxpayer dollars, it was Iranian money. And so they got their own money back and in exchange agreed to permanently pledge to the entire world that they would never have a nuclear program. Why the Trump administration would want to tear up that agreement and allow Iran to go back to, okay, I guess we don't have to abide by our side of it anymore. I just am continuously flummoxed by it. So if you could return to a compliance for compliance, it wouldn't turn Iran into a good actor, but they would be a bad actor without a nuclear program rather than a bad actor rushing toward a nuclear program. I'll never forget, as a member of this committee, going to Israel in January of 2015 with the then chairman, Republican Bob Corker, to sit in Prime Minister Netanyahu's office and ask about what Israel thought about our nuclear negotiations. The Prime Minister was completely against it. We had a meeting scheduled the next day with Tamir Pardo, the head of Mossad in Tel Aviv. The Prime Minister told us that meeting was canceled, that we were not going to be able to go do it. And our Republican committee chair had the backbone to look him in the face and say, if you cancel that meeting, we're canceling all the rest of the meetings here in Israel. We'll leave tomorrow. We won't have a single other meeting. Hastily, the meeting suddenly reappeared on the schedule, and we went to Tel Aviv, and we sat down in the offices of the Mossad with Tamir Pardo and others, and what they told us is, look, we don't like Iran. We don't know whether this is going to work, but what we do know is that the maximum pressure campaign is not working. We're hurting Iran's economy, but we're causing them to floor it in terms of developing a nuclear weapons program. So if you could return to compliance for compliance and get Iran once again to say we will never seek to purchase, acquire, or develop nuclear weapons ever, and we will permanently agree to the additional protocol of the IAEA, I would be strongly supportive on one condition. There is a but to this long intro. Get American hostages out of Iran. I don't think doing a deal with American hostages still in Iran is a good idea. And I would say that would need to be a precondition for me, and I would hope that the administration would take that seriously. We had a hearing this morning in Armed Services, Mr. Secretary, about the U.S.-China relationship. And obviously, this has dominated much of the discussion, too. But I couldn't help bring up a wonderful quote of George Kennan in Foreign Affairs, 1947, the sources of Soviet conduct. Here is his quote. He basically says the way that the U.S. needs to be strong in any bilateral competition of this kind is be strong internally. Exhibitions of indecision, disunity, and internal disintegration within this country have an exhilarating effect on the whole communist movement. At each evidence of these tendencies, a thrill of hope and excitement goes through the communist world. The most important thing we can do to be strong vis-a-vis China is be strong internally. They celebrate when they see us in chaos. They celebrate when they see an attack on the U.S. Capitol by domestic insurrectionists. They celebrate when they see a Congress of the United States fighting over whether we even want to analyze what happened in order to prevent it from happening again. So you have a big job to go out to the world and get good work done with respect to shoring up China, but we've got a lot of work to do here to demonstrate unity of purpose and resolve. I think the bill that we're about to pass on the Senate floor, which is built largely on this committee's nearly unanimous work on a China bill a month or so ago, is a really good piece of this. But the other thing we need to do with respect to China, and then here's my last question for you, is what they most fear about us is not our military, not even our economy. What they most fear about us is our network of allies, because they don't really have them. People understand China is predatory, self-interested, and they're not an ally or a partner in a traditional sense. They don't like NATO. They don't like the Quad. They don't like U.S.-India cooperation. They hated the idea of a trans-Pacific partnership with the U.S. more engaged in Asia. They hate the network of alliances. So tell us about the Summit for Democracy and what the Biden administration and the State Department are going to do in planning this gathering of the global democracies to share best practices, to look in the mirror and be self-critical, and to try to improve and strengthen democratic ties. That will be the thing that will most rattle the cage of Chinese leadership.
Well, first, Senator, I don't think I have a word to add or to change based on what you just said. And actually, your description of the planning for the summit is also right on. I think we're actively doing that. We look forward to hopefully the participation of members of this committee, but well before that, to sharing our thinking in more detail about what we're doing. But to the point that you just made, I think this is an opportunity for countries democratic countries to come together to look at the different challenges to democracy that we're each facing, including internally, because there's a lot of common denominators that manifest itself in different ways. But we want to have that conversation, as well as looking at what we can do to strengthen, to shore up, to make more resilient democracies around the world, as well as have a common agenda on a number of the most critical issues, dealing with autocracies being right at the top of the list. But I'm looking forward to an opportunity in the hopefully in the relatively near future to starting to share some more detailed thinking and to get thinking from this committee about how we can make this and by the way, not just a one-off, but part of an ongoing process and ongoing dialogue among democracies to deal with the challenges we face.
I'm over my time. Thanks for your indulgence, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Hack.